right, everybody. Welcome back to the Nomad Strength Show. Got a really fun one today. One I've been wanting to hopefully get on the pod for a long time just because I've been such a fan forever. And I probably will, maybe I'll get into a couple of embarrassing stories I had at a couple of your shows at some point in this conversation.
Great.
Joined by Clint Lowery today, guitar player for Sevendust and a handful of other bands, solo projects and stuff. But I want to talk about health stuff with you today for a little bit. But I know because it's probably a little different than what you usually chat about. But man, thanks for making time. I'm pumped to talk to you today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anytime you get I get an opportunity to talk about health and fitness and the sanity that brings to my life, I jump at it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And with that, we're kind of caught you in a fun, weird, off month, I guess, because you're completely detached from a lot of social media and everything else for about a month. You guys are on break from tour and stuff, and you kind of you posted that you're shutting it all down for a month. And I've seen you do that, periodically every handful of months or a few times a year or whatever. So what is it about that, especially I imagine just during touring times, that is so helpful for you just to completely detach from a lot of stuff?
I think with me, it's like a personal inventory I do on myself. It's not a, as we know, social media has amazing pluses, and there's a lot of great things and opportunity as far as exposure. And there's a lot of people that I follow on social media that are really inspiring. And then there's just really good content. And I guess you can kind of control what your content is to a certain degree. But I found myself, like a lot of people, you get kind of attached to it. It ends up being a thing where there are so many things algorithm wise that appeal to me, that I find myself spending so much time looking at the things that inspire me, but not doing a lot of the things that inspire me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a lot of, oh, that's great. And I love this quote and, all the things. And I'm like, I'm not putting any of these into my life, So I think it was more of a challenge. Let me check myself. Let me check my ego, because a lot of the social media aspects can be driven by ego and look at me and look what I'm doing. And when I was really checking my motives in terms of my post and the things the way I was interacting with it, it was more of a, let me just kind of check my ego, check my, motive for being here, and then just kind of step away from it. And I think a cleanse is good, and I just need to read more. I need to be a better parent. I need to be focused on my music for a second. And if I look at screen time like everyone else does, I'm like, that's a lot of time, So just a kind of doing an audit on my life.
Do you need to be because I've done them in the past, and I've thought I was good enough to do it while still keeping the apps on my phone. But I know if they're even like on my phone, I'm going to open them up. So I have to like delete everything off the phone. Do you do the same?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the first few days, it's kind of trippy how many times I go to open the app, and this is a good choice for me, because there's a lot of things I miss about it, the connections and stuff, but it was alarming to me how many times I go to my phone, and I still I'll go to Google now and just that's not a social media thing, but it's kind of the same thing.
It took a couple of days for me the last time I did it, because when you delete it, I could open it up and go to whatever app it was, if it was Instagram or whatever, just by remembering where it was on the screen. And then for the first couple of days, that was a different app. So I would open up this app. I'm like, this is not what I wanted to do. This is not Instagram or whatever. But I've done that same thing. And it does take a couple of days to really kind of clear and get to the point where you feel good about where you get good about it. 'Cause it is kind of like a withdrawal symptom kind of thing. Like you mentioned, you're checking it, you think you feel something in your pocket or whatever. You're just it's habitual, and you're just there's nothing going on here. But it does take I don't know, for me, it's usually a 48 hour-ish, 72-hour period of that 100%. Withdrawal kind of thing. And then I'm fine, and then it's not that difficult anymore.
And I've got a history with addiction and those type of things. So my personality just is one that needs those voids filled, and social media and that kind of attention, and that it fills a void in some way. So I try to steer clear of that as much as I can.
Well, and that was a big reason why I wanted to talk to you a lot about the health and fitness part of it, because that kind of is what pulled you out of a lot of that stuff in the past. So when you were, in prior years living rock star life on the road, right, there was essentially kind of two versions of your life from, just me being a fan and following along. And then when you got clean, and then the health and fitness part became a huge part of it, how was that transition, and what was it like? What kind of training did you find, and how did that help fill those voids, like you said?
Oh man, what's looking back, even when I was an active alcoholic out there touring, drinking a lot, when I would come off tour, I still leaned on running. I was a big runner, and would go work out, and I would kind of dry out and have these like 10-day periods where I would just like shut it down and get it healthy again. So there was always a little bit of that fitness. The alcohol was definitely, and that whole lifestyle was taking me away from the fitness, my love for fitness and all that. So it was always this weird balance thing I was trying. Yeah. I always actually told myself, well, if I can run still and lift weights, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm still okay if I can do these things. And I would, there was a saying that I liked. It was, the body heals and the liar returns. So I would feel good. I'd get re-energized and go back out on tour and just dismantle everything again with alcohol and, and the fatigue that comes along with that. But when I did get sober, the fitness was my biggest ally. It was such that healthy addiction. Yeah. I loved the way I felt afterwards. And I just started chasing it. I realized ultimately it was more about the mental clarity that came with it and what it did for my emotional well-being associated with fitness. And people are always like, you're obsessed with it. Fitness, I'm like, I'm obsessed with feeling good. I'm obsessed with what comes with my mental health. The workouts are great, and I love that. And there's something about pushing yourself to those limits that make you feel alive. But yeah, I always loved fitness. But when I got sober, it was all in.
Was that difficult to have that sort of lifestyle that or pursuit that you're trying to work on while you're a touring musician? Because those aren't usually things that you would imagine coexist together. You know what I mean?
Well, if your focus is like when I was drinking, my focus was drinking. I was really good at it, doing it. I knew how to find it. I knew where the bars were at. So I put the same zeal toward fitness, and there's so many opportunities to find a fit lifestyle on tour. Gyms everywhere. I would get runners, take me to different gyms, meet different coaches in different areas, and you get this community going. When you're looking for it, it's there. And there's so many opportunities. I never really saw the country. I've been to every major city for years and years and years, and never really saw the city. So when now I go on these hikes, I go on these runs, I go on long bike rides, and I see so many amazing places. And so that's another aspect of it. But I mean, there's so much to be said about if you are looking for something, you can find. If you're determined, with the same zeal that I used to love drinking. So
yeah, and when you took on a lot of the fitness stuff, and I don't know if you still do it the same amount that you did, but you really went down the CrossFit path. That was the one that you kind of was attractive to you. What was it about CrossFit that pulled you over to that realm of the health world?
So I'd always been a runner, lifted weights cosmetically, chest, buys, the typical things
show
that
muscles.
people, show muscles, exactly. I got introduced to CrossFit from my wife. She had just had her second child, and so I got into it, fell deeply in love with it, because I already had like an endurance capabilities. I didn't have any like serious Olympic lifting training at all. So I loved the Olympic lifts, fell in love with those because I was so bad at it, and exposed all the mobility issues I had thoratically and hips and all the things that a good Olympic lifting coach can help you with and help you understand. So I fell in love with that. Didn't realize how bad I was at that. But so then, the Olympic lifts were the huge thing. And then, I don't do as much CrossFit as I used to, but I did learn a tremendous amount during the years that I did it, as far as the lifts and things like that. And just so gymnastics were a huge thing. It was just, it was fun. I was never a competitive athlete when I was growing up, so it was the only way I was competing and kind of filling that void that I missed as a younger man. I was entering CrossFit at a master's age. I was like 39 years old, 40 years old.
And you competed in the open and didn't you almost make a run at regionals one year or something like that?
Man, I did. There was one year, but it was always one of the workouts that would come to derail my chances. That huge weakness. Yes. And mine was strict handstand push-ups and handstand push-ups, anything like that. So I hit a wall. Had I trained, because I have a bunch of really good friends. Josh Marunda, he's a really good friend. He's doing great. He was in the games this year.
Yep.
I love those guys, but I just, I always had one foot in, one foot out, and I never really properly trained. I had some amazing people trying to push me, but I didn't have that extra gear that is required to do that,
Yeah, it takes to actually be competitive. It takes like you said, that extra step in where you're like, okay, I guess I'm gonna do this now. You have to make that decision. I'm gonna actually go do the thing instead of just we'll show up and see how it goes. Because I've been in that boat a couple of times as well. I'm curious how when you actually took the fitness and the strength and all this stuff seriously, and you're starting to physically change a lot over the years, how much that impacted and helped while you guys are actually out touring and playing shows and doing all this kind of stuff. Could you feel a difference in the before to then, just from fitness and how that helps you guys when you're out on the road?
I mean, outside of what it does to you physically, I would do these workouts during the day that were just brutal and super intense and all these different things and challenging. I would get on stage. I'm like, this used to be a challenging thing to get on stage and really go at it, and now it's made that more of the cool down segment of my workout. It's nothing that I'm doing on stage is close to the intensity or volume or the load that goes along with some of those workouts, but it definitely made me feel like I had an advantage in terms of being a performer. What the hugest benefit for me is just the way it calms the stressors down in my life. It helps me the way that I respond to life, respond to other people's personalities, the way I respond. I feel so rejuvenated after a workout comeback, and then whatever struggles or obstacles I faced during the day or while on tour, missing home, all those things. It's a lot easier when I got that good workout in me and hydrated, feel good. Just
you guys started doing the post-show ice baths. I saw these last handful of weeks, dude. How's that been?
It's been fantastic. All right, so I just got out of one. That's why I'm kind of shivering down. But there's so much good data on those, and I got my drummer and my other guitar player into it. And it's really more of anything. It's just a bonding thing. We laugh and watching them get into it. Excuse me. But especially Morgan, he's always got these elements and things. So I got him into it. He's more, every day, can we set it up? Can we set it up?
Nice.
And he's very into it. But yeah, like I said, there's the obvious benefits that everyone knows about, which is it's a big Kool-Aid right now, right? Everyone's doing the ice plunges, it's in everyone's feed. But I like it, Sometimes I'm in there, I'm like, what am I doing? Is this really working? But I used to be so scared of the mental barrier of getting into the water, taking the cold showers. I started reading a few books, and it was do a minute, 3 minutes to the cold shower. And then I was always a wuss when it came to that stuff. But now it's part of my pretty much everyday routine.
And pretty soon it'll start trickling out, and pretty soon you're gonna have like 30 people around this thing after shows wanting to do it. I bet.
There's already man. It's crazy. My son and his teammates, after football, they want to get in. It's the cool thing to do. It's been around forever, but
seriously,
now they just make very expensive little baths they sell.
It's unbelievable when I go to look at those things, because I'll get them, just like everybody else. It'll come through as an ad on an Instagram story or whatever, and I'll open it up. I'm like, oh, this one looks pretty cool. I wonder how much this is, and it's like $4,000 or something like that. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Freaking porcelain tub, man. Like, I don't need to, like, I'll just go get cold. I know, like, around here in Idaho, like, give me 2 more weeks and I'll just leave it out overnight and it'll be cold enough.
I can't wait for that. I'm gonna save so much money on ice. My wife's already like, we could have bought the chiller, because the chiller's like $1,000,
Yeah, exactly. But it's too funny. The whole ice bath thing was, I remember starting to do it probably around, well, I can tell you exactly when, actually. I was listening to Tim Ferriss, and this was like right when I started coaching back in 2014-ish, like late 2014, and he had Wim Hof on for the first time, like that fall or something like that. And that was like the first time I'd ever heard of Wim, and it was still pretty, like, Wim had one book, I think, at that point, but he wasn't huge yet. But that first podcast with Tim is kind of what blew him up. Right. And I remember listening to that and thinking, like, this crazy old Dutch dude like hikes mountains in his shorts and that's it. I'm like, let's see if there's anything to this, And I remember doing some of the breath work, like his breath work method, and then getting into the ice and doing that kind of stuff, like back in 2015 or something like that. And
wow,
that's been a major part of my coaching, is like helping the breath work and the ice bath stuff since then. But it's been really cool to see how big that's become. Like, and now like we said, it's the trendy thing now, because now everybody's got their own products and stuff. But like, it's been around as long as humans have been. I mean, like, there's records of like Scandinavian women giving birth and then like dumping their babies in the rivers. You know what I mean? Like right when they're born. Like, it's been, but it's cool to see it now like catch on, because I've loved it forever, man. Like, it's been so fun to have. And so, like, seeing everybody else do it, I'm like, yes, we got another one.
I was ahead of the curve.
Well, it's not even that. I'm just like pumped that like other people. I'm like, yes, there's one more that wants to do it now.
Because if you're like me, and I think you are, it's like when you there's, I think another thing that with CrossFitters or anyone that works out, they talk about it a lot. They're all really jazzed about it, and then there's always that cliche of CrossFitters and vegans and. But I think part of it with me is I really want other people to enjoy and feel these feelings that I'm feeling. It's like, I honestly, when I have friends that are older that are dealing with chronic pain of any kind, I want them to find solutions. It makes me generally happy when someone feels better, or they figure out they unlock something in their potential, and that I think that's part of what it is. It doesn't come off like that. A lot of times it comes off like just, oh, hush! It's like, don't bring up CrossFit. Don't do it, because he'll talk about it for hours. Yeah, but I just like the ice bath is a good example of that. I just like when people enjoy it, and
it's a fun thing, man. And honestly, I think fitness has that ability, like you said, with CrossFit, but even just in general, because I think people see when someone's making healthy choices and they start like feeling better, and then they notice changes happening in that person, it becomes attractive to everybody else, and they see that and they're like, what's he doing? Like, something's different. He's got something going on. Like, I want to know what he's doing that's making him feel good, and he's happier, and like he's less stressed and all this kind of stuff. So while we're talking about all the things that it does for us, like internally, health wise and mentally and stuff like that, I think it's actually just as important for other people to see what it does externally for us too. Like, we're kinder, we're more patient, we're just better people when we're healthier and we're not stressed, and like these things can help with a lot of that. So that's why I think it's so cool, like when you're doing all this stuff out on tour and you're traveling around, like everybody else that's with you guys, because you travel with the whole crew and stuff. It's not just the 5 of you guys, right. So it's like everybody else gets to see all that too, and they're like, oh, he's like totally different than he was 15 years ago or whatever in a lot of ways, And the health and the training is a big part of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I never really thought about it, but it is. There's a lot of times when my wife I'll come in from a workout, and or she'll say, "You probably should go and get a workout in," and she knows, and she used to I used to do a lot of two-a-days and different things. And at first she was like, that's a lot, you're doing a lot. Then she figured out quick that it was really important to my mental health. I needed the extra workouts and stuff like that. If it was 20 minutes, it was a 30-minute little, just let me go do this real fast. I come back and she noticed a difference. She's like, I'm not going to fight this. And if that's what you want to do, if that's what makes you happy, if I give you 30 minutes and you give me 3 hours of a calmer demeanor, more patience, more helpful, that's going to be good for everybody,
She'll take that trade.
Yeah. But then there's also the flip side where there's people that are obsessed and they're missing their responsibilities in their normal life because they're giving so much time to the gym, so much time to that community and kind of escaping in it. So there's a balance,
Well, and I think a lot of it too is there's a similarity, because you made the analogy earlier about the similarities with addictions, right? Like I think that becomes one for people just the same as any other type of thing will. And it becomes like everything to that person, and so they end up just being essentially consumed by it.
Overtraining,
overtraining, and that it's easier. It seems easier to justify because it's like a healthier pursuit,
absolutely.
Right? But it's still doing the same thing in a lot of ways, where you're getting sucked away from all, like you said, your responsibilities and your family and all these other things. But like people will be like, oh well, I'm working out, I'm healthy. I'm like, you're healthy like in this little box over here basically, but like everything else is kind of falling away because of it.
And my kid wants to throw football, and I'm doing like a 3-hour session, I'm going to miss out on a lot, so it's just finding the balance of all that, which is everyone struggles with that.
Yeah, totally. So the actual training that you're doing now, whether it's on the road or when you're at home or whatever, are you programming stuff yourself? Are you following a program from somebody local? What is the type of stuff that you're doing now?
Well, I mean, it fluctuates throughout the years, and the interest that I'm at currently. Sometimes I really fell back into running when my son was really into running. So we ended up doing a lot of stuff. I play a lot of basketball with my son and different things like that. So whatever I'm doing with my kids athletically is usually what dictates my training now. Yeah. But I always have been here lately. I've been doing a lot of the F3 stuff.
Oh yeah.
I just go do I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. But, I do that as a kind of a morning workout, which is usually generally conditioning and those type of things. Then I do a strength training segment later on in the day where I do the basic lifts, deadlifting, squats, and just all the lifts. But I usually have some type of a conditioning element in the morning, and then I'll do strength training later in the day. But if it depends, if my son, like today, he wants to play basketball, so I'll go with him, do rebounds, do a few things like that. Then I'll go do some lifting or whatever. But I mean, some of my older training has been more specific to lifting. I go through these phases where I really want to just get stronger, but I battle with some little injuries and chronic things, plantar fasciitis. I have this knee issue, just all the things that happen when you're 51 years old. And but I'm just happy to have health enough to generally be able to move my body, generally be able to lift pretty decent, and I'm more of a maintenance guy now.
Sure. Yeah. When you're out on the road, do you bring stuff to train and just do it wherever you stop, or do you usually like to pop into gyms and just kind of wherever you are, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. I have like kettlebells, some medicine ball. I have like a wall ball, and different things like that that I just have as a fail safe. Like I'll have dumbbells up to 40s or whatever, and just things that can ride in the bus. And then I'll usually try to go find gyms at least 4 days a week when I'm on tour.
Yeah,
a lot of hotel gyms sometimes.
Yeah, it probably have better stuff on your bus than a lot of those hotel gyms.
Oh yeah, it's the worst. But so every now and then you'll get like a But I do a lot of stuff. I have I have a pretty decent little home gym. I got a Peloton, a tread, rower, obviously, all the weights, everything at home. So
that makes it nice, dude. I'm team garage gym for life.
I love it. It's like I invested in my health. It was a good investment.
Yeah. Plus, you don't have to be under crappy lights and listen to crappy music around people that aren't training hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's a whole culture of people that are on their phones the whole time. And there's a lot of high school kids that go to my gym. The only reason I go to the local gym here is because of my son, and they like to shoot basketball there. And I'll just go. And they got a few things, lap machines, and things I don't have at the home.
Sure. I wanted to ask you about your guys' the way that you guys have been touring lately, or maybe these last couple of years, because it seems like what you guys have done is kind of start doing it a little bit differently than a lot of bands are touring now, and you're doing like these shorter, just a handful of weeks and then off for multiple weeks or 6-8 weeks or whatever, and then just kind of doing those throughout the year instead of like these big 6-month straight, however many 100+ shows in a row type things, which I know you guys did in the past. But like, what was kind of the point to which you decided we need to do something different with how we're doing this?
I'm glad that you noticed that. I always wonder if people do. Not a lot of people do, but personally, I came to a point where I went to the band, and after years and years and decades of touring, I'm like, there's a threshold that we have as a band. After 3 weeks, the band starts to get the tensions grow, the fatigue sets in, the enthusiasm to play starts dying, and then there's the huge thing with me is my family, being away from my family a long time. So I went to the band, a couple of the guys were like, we have to implement a new touring model. It can't go more than 3.5 weeks. And if we do, we have to have longer breaks. One, it's just we know our threshold. We know when to keep us in a healthy headspace and not start turning on each other. Cause there's been times where every time a band stays out long periods of time, that's when the drama happens. That's when you got men in a metal tube. It's going to start going haywire. I don't care how stable you are. So we recognize that in ourselves, recognize that we should probably start doing shorter tours, and it's working, keeps us interested in the process, keeps us balanced with our family. I've sacrificed so much time with my family already, and I've given a lot to music, and I still adore the process and love, but I don't want to be out there burnt out. And professionally, it's just a better thing to not play so much, because people get tired of you oversaturate markets. It's not useful for us to play all year round, and people just start Sevendust again. We need to be a little more scarce.
And it's interesting because I see that, to me, seems more sustainable for, even if you're not guys with families or whatever, like you said, just from an interpersonal relationship thing of the band, like that seems like a much more sustainable way to do it. Because then I'm seeing, I think it was Zach Bryan that just announced like next year he's doing like 10 straight months, basically, or something like that, of literally like 2 or 3 shows every week for basically 10 months. And that, seems wild to me, but you
said two shows a week. It's like a weekend warrior thing. See, I would do
pretty much. I think it's like a Thursday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, some weekends, but it's like at least 3 weeks out of every month from February to November or something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, and so I'm curious if you're thinking that what you guys are doing maybe gets seen, and they're like, by other bands, and they're like, oh, this actually seems pretty nice. Like,
man, so me and Morgan laugh about this all the time, and there's a lot of things that we and I'm not to stroke our own ego, but a lot of things we brainstorm a lot, and we talk, and we spitball constantly on the model and how can we beat this up, and so we come up with these different things. We were one of the first bands to do a VIP experience with the releasing of a record, and just a few things we've always had, because we're out here all the time, and when you're clear, you're analyzing everything, and you're like, what works and what doesn't work. And so I have seen bands start doing less touring. And because it was always the industry model where managers and labels would tell the band, you have to be out there constantly. You have, because every time you green light a show, the booking agent gets paid, the manager gets paid, the label loves it. They just want you to be out there. And I understand that aspect, but at the same time, I've circled back to them and say, if you want us to continue our career, if you want us to not break up, if you want us to be, it's not even less shows a year, it's how you do those shows. You know, you don't have to do 5 weeks and then we could do 3 weeks and then take 2 weeks off and do another 3 weeks, you know, like you can spread it out, but it's having those light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to be home in 2 weeks, as opposed to I have to wrap my head around being away for 7 weeks, 6 weeks. It's just unhealthy. And we've introduced the new model. They always said you can't do it because the expenses, shorter tours don't work because you do a startup cost to the tour.
Right.
And I challenged all of that. I'm like, I believe we can do it. Either that or we break up, so there won't be any income. So you have to figure out a way to make this happen. You know?
Yeah. Do you think that worked because you guys had been doing like? Do you think that would work for somebody that like a brand new band, or do you think it was more beneficial because of where you guys were at the time?
I think it only works for a band that's obviously self-sustainable. They don't need any tour support, and they're making enough money to do that. I definitely think as a baby band, newer band, it's grind time.
Yeah.
You're gonna
just be out there.
You have to be out there. You know, like we did that, and I don't think there was any other way around it. And I loved it back then. I could stay on tour forever. I was in my 20s and 30s, like bring it on. But now, knowing our threshold now, it's different.
And from an income standpoint too, I've seen in the creator and artist space, like, and even yourself, you started using Patreon recently, which seems like that's a really cool way to supplement this whole thing anyways, by getting some more like direct to audience support financially, but then also get like connection with community and the people that like the music and stuff. And it seems like those types of things are also helpful in maybe making the less touring possible in the model 100%. That you're talking about, you know? Yeah.
I had to have that. I like doing it. I think if the Patreon thing can be very cool, if you have value, if there's things that people can come and actually get there, that actually, you know, that people are interested in having. There's a ton of really good Patreon. I have a couple of people that I follow that just have really cool content and stuff. And I like supporting artists, you know, if it's cool. It's a good way to just kind of, like you said, stay connected with people. I love all the people that are the patrons I have. I don't have a tremendous amount, but the ones I do, they're great, you know, and I try to give them.
You do some cool stuff with them too, like show, you know, kind of playthroughs of songs and writing processes and stuff like that. Yeah. Is that kind of what you wanted to do with it? What was kind of your thought when you were putting it together?
Well, I was doing, during the pandemic, I started doing Zoom writing sessions where I would invite 20 people, 10 or 20 people, and they would sit in and we would, you know, do like I would share the screen and they could see me actually working. And then I started the Patreon after that, do some thinking I'll kind of do the same thing, but offer like the playthroughs and different things like that. And there's like a Discord where we chat every single day, and
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a cool community. I try to give them like things that I would want an artist to show me. Like if I was in Trent Reznor's, you know, Patreon, I'm like, hey Trent, show me the stems for, you know, this one song, and you know, like, I'll show you everything behind the curtain. Like,
that's funny. That's that's a cool way to go about it, because there's a lot of guys a lot of people in the like the podcast space and even in the fitness space that have like these private communities and stuff. And there's a couple that I have that I'm a follower of that are cool. But I think, like you said, it really only works if you've actually got cool stuff like behind them, because like if your stuff is cool that's free, you have to make the stuff that's behind the paywall even cooler than that. So
absolutely,
so people
the
actually want to
I like that. Yeah,
exactly.
I used to post a few things on Instagram. Like, man, that should probably have been Patreon exclusive,
That was really good,
because I know they're watching it like, hey man, we're over here, we're like we're paying for this content. Yeah, so
that's funny. We got a few minutes before you gotta head out, so I wanted to tell you, I had this, I told my friend that was with me at this night that I would tell you this story because it's hilarious and embarrassing from me being a 16-year-old at the time. So this was like I was 16, so this would have been, or 17 or something like that. So I think this would have been like your first tour back. So this was like the Cold Day Memory tour. Okay. And you guys were playing up here in Boise at the Knitting Factory. And right next door is this, it's actually gone now, but there's this bar that used to be called Hey Penny. It was like connected to the concert house. Yeah. And we were standing in line and we're like hanging out before, and my uncle and his friend were there like meeting us down there. And his friend comes out and comes to me and my two buddies and he goes, hey, you guys want to like go over there? And we're like, what? And he goes, look in the window right there. And LeJean and Morgan and I think one of your guys' techs was in the restaurant just like hanging out before the show or whatever. And my uncle's friend had been in there talking to him and just like chatting him up. And he had known him from being in town a couple times before. So he's like, I told him that you guys want to come say hi, like go in and say hi or whatever. And we're like, are you serious? Like what? So we like walk in there and we're in the bar and we're 16 and nobody stopped us like we were walking in. Right. And so it was already, we're kind of feeling awkward because we knew we weren't even supposed to be in the building. So we like walk in and we just awkward. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like who's going to stop us first and throw us out? So we go,
play it cool, kid.
Yeah, exactly. We go and we sit next to him just like out of nowhere. And the three of us are just like kind of doing the side eye looking over at him. And I don't even remember what we said, but I think LeJean started asking us questions, and and like so obvious what we were doing. Like we're literally wearing Sevendust shirts, and it's just like, we're here to talk to you guys. But they were both awesome and talked to us for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're like, all right, well we'll go, we'll like have a good show or whatever. And it was just like the most, you could like imagine the most awkward interaction of us, like a group of 17-year-olds and one of their favorite bands, and like you meeting. It was just the funniest thing ever. And every time we like go to a show, one of your guys' shows, like even in years past, we always bring up like, remember when we actually were just idiots and were losers for like 5 minutes from meeting the three of them.
Dude, it is so far, dude. It's so far from being a loser or idiot though. Like we especially LeJean Morgan loves those interactions. Like we're not the type, and that's another thing back to touring less, because if you, the less you play, the more threshold you have for that. And giving those kids that we were really adamant about just having, every time you interact with someone, man, you got to give them a little bit of love. You got to, even if they're obnoxious, if they're kind, if they're awkward, if they're shy, just try to interact with them, because it sticks. Yeah. If they're cool, it sticks. And if they're not cool, that sticks too. Right. And so like, nervous kids, we see them all the time, and it's like, hey, what's up, man? I get it. We're the dorky fans too when we meet people. It's like, well,
it was so funny, man. And it makes me feel better that you don't think that we were losers, because we totally felt like it every time we talk about it.
No, that makes us feel great, man. It's like, you have these young people that are interested in meeting our old asses. It's funny.
Right. That's awesome. Before I let you get out of here, I want to ask too, from a music standpoint, and I'll let you pump the new album and stuff like that in a second too. I'm curious, things that you are listening to lately. Like, is there any stuff that you've been into a ton lately that's either new, or you're just going back and grinding through it again, and what you've been listening to?
Man, I have such a weird playlist thing. I'm very routine. I when I run, I listen to the like real chill R&B stuff, and like it's absolutely like I'll put on that chill radio and just like I'll hear a song and save it to my playlist if it's really like ambient. I listen to soundtracks, Trent and Atticus, because I'm trying to get into scoring films, so I'll listen to all this stuff that's like that. people will be surprised. I mean, I heard this other band, Nothing But Thieves, the other day. They're kind of like blood. They're like Royal Blood. Kind of a cool pop. Queens of the Stone Age commercialized. It's just kind of cool. I heard them the other day. I'm like, that's a pretty cool band. I listen to everything, Japanese house to Gojira to Prince. I love old 80s Depeche Mode and Duran Duran, and I'll go from that to it's all over the place.
That's awesome.
Some of the country stuff I'll get into every now and then. Hip hop. I'm a huge hip hop because I love the beats and the production and just there's so many genres, man. I don't really stick to anything.
That's awesome. You guys just had a new album come out a couple months back, and I was going to say it's killer, but that's like the name of the record. So
Truth. It's killer. We should have called it that. This is killer.
Yeah. And it's awesome. And you guys are on a break for a few more weeks, and then you're going back out in a few weeks. When do you guys start back up again on the road?
We start October 6th in Houston, Texas with Static X. Their Dope is opening the show, us and Static X. It's going to be a big production, one of the biggest biggest productions we've ever had. So It's been awesome, man. I'm excited.
That's awesome. Well, man, it was awesome to have you on. I really appreciate you making time today, man. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks again.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother.